Hey everyone, one of the biggest leadership lessons that you can learn, perhaps the most important one, is how to hold people accountable for meeting the standards that you have set forth for their performance. Some leaders will never really learn this lesson and they will just flail and suffer, and they'll underperform as a leader and they'll overfunction for their employees because they've never really mastered this. That is just holding people accountable for the standards that you've set for their performance. So in this video, I'm going to share what happens. I've seen this happen time and time again when you don't hold people accountable, and then all of a sudden you do start holding them accountable. I'll share what happens on your team, and then I'll also go over just a couple points on what's the upside to doing this, like how will this improve your team, and then what's the downside if you don't do this. What are the pitfalls that will probably happen on your team? So if you're watching this video, maybe you are not really holding your people fully accountable with consequences for not meeting minimum expectations. If you're working in like a knowledge environment in an office, it's so easy to fall into this trap. So one of the big transition moments for me as a leader was when I went from just being very encouraging and setting expectations and really talking about what minimum performance standards were in meetings and really being like a cheerleader and just really trying to encourage my team and motivate them to hit these marks. Some people would, some people wouldn't. And for many years, I would just kind of let those underperformers, the ones that show up to work on time and they kind of get their work done, but they're just always just at the edge of not being right up to your standard, I would just let them skate by. I would give them passing evaluations each year. And there are some real consequences for not only your career, but also your team's performance if you do this. But what is also important to know is that when you finally start transitioning to being a leader and you start holding them accountable, you're going to find that people will react in one of two different ways. Your top performers, you'll get a boost from them. So these people have been performing at or above your standard for years or months or whatever the case may be. And then when you let them know in advance, hey, these are the expectations that I've been saying this year at your performance evaluations. If you don't meet these standards, there will be consequences. Those people will work even harder. The ones that are just intrinsically motivated, they probably already have a really good work ethic and they've already been hitting your standard. That's one group. The other group are the ones that probably you're watching this video because of those people. It's the ones that you've just poured so much time and energy in. You've been trying to pull them up to the standard and you're just frustrated and don't know what to do. And so now you're like, okay, I really have to hold them accountable and there's got to be consequences. I think you'll find that those individuals, when you communicate to them, this year's going to be different. The annual evaluation is going to have some real teeth to it. I'm going to hold you accountable for exactly your performance. And if you're not meeting the standard, there will be consequences. Those people will just keep doing what they were doing before for the most part. They're going to call your bluff, especially if you've let them skip by. You give them a 3 out of 5 or whatever your scale is, and there's really no consequences. You're frustrated, they're underperforming, and then you wind up giving them a passing evaluation. Those people will probably not improve at all when you warn them that this is about to happen. Okay, so what are some upsides when you finally start really holding people accountable for their performance, and what are some downsides if you don't do this? First off, number one, you're gonna get a boost in overall team performance when you let them know, like at their semi-annual evaluation. Here's your semi-annual evaluation. In 6 months, we're going to do your annual, and if you do not meet the minimum requirements for your role, then there will be consequences. As I said before, your top performers will try even harder, and you'll get another boost out of them. They're going to really make sure that they are absolutely hitting the minimum performance standard and probably going above that. And as I said before, the others probably will just keep doing what they're doing. But one of the nice consequences of doing this is that you will get a team performance boost. Another upside to finally holding people accountable for meeting your minimum performance standards is that you will have the information and the data that you need to get rid of those that are underperforming on your team. They'll have a choice. They will either have to rise up to meet your minimum standards, or you will start the process with HR or however you do it in your organization to get rid of those people. So you give them a final chance, they can do some training or something like that, but then you'll have put in motion the process for getting rid of the underperformers, which are dragging your team down. Let's pretend like I'm your supervisor. My expectation for you, for your minimum work standard, is that you go and hit like on this video if you're finding something useful, if it's inspiring you to do something different as a leader. Please hit the like button. This channel is all about my experience in trying out new things, reading books, taking personality tests, and trying to come up with a comprehensive, easy to understand guide and plan that I can use to be the best possible leader. And I hope one day to share that plan with all of you. So if that's something that you're interested in, taking that journey with me, hit subscribe. Finally, right now I'm reading an amazing book on leadership, one of the best books I've read in many years. And I'm also consuming that person's podcast. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's linked in the description. If you want to check out the Kindle version of that book, it's linked in the description. It's awesome. I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, and I just cannot put it down. Number 3, one of the things that you'll notice when you start really holding people accountable with consequences is that people will not be meeting your minimum standard because of respect for you or because of how amazing you are at motivating your team, or because of all of the resources that you give them, or the time or the energy that you spend in putting together training manuals. They'll do it because they know that there's consequences. It's work, right? They're there from 8 to 5 or whatever the case may be. Everybody's busy, everybody has other things. But by doing this, by actually holding people accountable and having real consequences, you're putting this work, their 8 to 5 job, at the top of their priority while they're at work, because they know that if they don't get this done, there are consequences. And so you can also think of this as really the ultimate way to motivate your team. You can be fun, you can have great meetings, you can have great retreats, but if there are no consequences, even your top performers over time will start to come down in performance if there are no consequences. Okay, number 4, if you don't hold people accountable and have real consequences for not meeting your minimum performance standards, what you'll find is that the morale on your team will eventually go down. And I've seen this on teams that I've been on, and I've seen this on teams that I've led, where if you don't hold people accountable and have consequences for people not meeting the minimum standard, so there's people that are dead weight on your team, those top performers, the ones that you don't really need to motivate at all because they're just, as I said, intrinsically self-motivated, they have a strong work ethic, those individuals will wind up leaving because they understand that they're pulling the dead weight of these other people who are not meeting the minimum standards that you have been explaining and re-explaining and sharing with your team. And so this is another way to motivate yourself to take this next step to become a better leader and actually hold people accountable, is that you owe it to your top performers. Your top performers are the ones that show up to work on time and they put out for you and they do a great job. And if you don't hold everybody on the team accountable for meeting those minimum standards, then you're doing a huge disservice to your top performers, and those people will leave. That's a short video on accountability and just things that I've learned over the years in holding people accountable and actually having real consequences for not meeting your standard. I will see you guys in the next one.